Notre Dame fans, welcome back to another edition of the Irish Breakdown podcast. It is Monday. It is November 1st. November 1st, Vince, means number one, we're getting into that money month of the season. It means we can start talking more about bowl projections, which we'll discuss a little bit today. And it means we're kind of down that home stretch where we really find out what this Notre Dame football team and everybody else in college football is all about. So today's show, by the way, I'm with Vince D'Addario, our football analyst at IrishBreakdown.com. I'm Brian Driscoll, the publisher. And today's show, we're first going to talk briefly about some news and notes from Brian Kelly's press conference today. And then we're going to dive into a roundup of college football. And in between that, we're going to talk a little bit about Notre Dame's bowl projections, which I normally don't start paying attention to them until we get close to the time of the college football playoff rankings, which come out tomorrow night, because I feel like people that do bowl projections like in weeks 4 and 5
or preseason.
Yeah, it's just like, seriously, dude.
It's ridiculous. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Which is why we've avoided them like the plague until now. But I feel like we're 2/3 through the season, right? We're 8 games in. We're in November, and it's time to start looking at, okay, how Notre Dame plays these next 4 games is going to have a big impact on where they're seated and where they're slotted and who they play. So some very intriguing matchups, which we'll dive into, Vince. But let's first talk about the Notre Dame press conference with Brian Kelly. Obviously, the big news, not unexpected at all, but still big news, is that Kyle Hamilton will not play this weekend against Navy. So 2 good things about that. Number one, it's another week where he's not practicing, so there's not it was very clear from Brian Kelly's comments, Vince, that it's still a rehab week. It's a get him healthy week. So it's not like he's going to be practicing, which is a positive. Let that knee and his back rest and heal. And number 2, Vince, there's just no reason to play Kyle Hamilton against Navy.
Zero. It's not. I mean, is Notre Dame better defensively if Kyle Hamilton plays?
Always, against every opponent.
That's not even a question. That's that's not even. That's like when you're doing a science experiment. That's like the understood part, and so you move that aside. Like, we get that, but it's not going to be the difference in Notre Dame winning, and it's not going to be anything that's going to help Kyle Hamilton's draft status. So it doesn't help him personally. It isn't the difference between a win or a loss.
It helps the team, but it shouldn't move the needle from having him. But in this game, I mean,
because they played the best offense that they're going to play all season this past week without him and won the game by 10.
Won. Okay. And that was against a team that's much better than the one they're going to face on Saturday.
Just a little bit. So,
listening to the press conference, it's kind of funny. It's just like, this isn't vintage Navy. It's not.
No.
This is a 2-6 Navy team that's, I kind of listen like there's some sort of offensive awakening that Navy's had recently and scored 24, 17, 20, 20. They've scored over 20 points twice all year. Once was in a win over UCF. They got 30 points, 34 points, and their defense stinks. And then they scored 20 in their most recent win over Tulsa. And Tulsa also was pretty bad this year, which is kind of wild because they were really good last year, but they're 3-5 now.
Yeah.
And they had a lot of guys. I mean, they're both of their starting second corners transferred to Missouri, and
then they lost they lost
Zaven Collins, who was a first-round NFL draft pick, and so it's been a strange year for old Tulsa.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he's out. One of the things I'm curious about, One of the things I'm curious about, and we'll dive more into this as we get into the week, is one of the questions you have to ask yourself is, do you defend Navy with your base personnel, or do you defend Navy with sort of a different look? And we're going to find out what Marcus Freeman and Mike Ellison talked about. That was are going to decide. That was another comment from Brian Kelly. And this has been true in past years. Mike Ellison has always had a very big role in helping prepare the game plan against Navy because the defensive line is such a vital part to that. And he talked about that. And then, of course, Marcus Freeman has defended the triple option twice in his 4 years at Cincinnati. They played Army last year, and then they played Navy in 2018 and really did very well against both teams. We talked yesterday about how well they did against Navy in 2018, blew them out, shut down their run game. And they had good success last year against Army. And Army was a decent team last year. Cincinnati held them to 182 yards, which was tied for their third lowest. The only other 2 teams that held Navy below their season average, or Army below their season average, was Citadel and Navy, 2 other triple option teams, which always happens. I mean, almost every year, Navy's lowest rushing yard total is either against Army or Air Force.
Right. It's when you're looking in the mirror and they see it every day at practice. I mean, that just makes sense.
Yeah. Right. And so that's usually the case. So he's had good success. He has twice faced the triple option, and neither time has he given up more than 200 yards rushing,
which is huge. And that's with teams that are decent at running the option, and this team is not great at it. So
no, they had a good
performance.
Worry. Yeah, they had a good performance against Tulsa, but I mean they're not good. They're not good. So Vince, let's dive into. There wasn't really a whole lot else noteworthy from the press conference. Right. You know, Brian Kelly talked about Jack Coan, and he always had faith in him, and didn't listen to the outside noise about him, which is. I had no problem with that. I don't want the Notre Dame head coach to necessarily be dictated by things that people say. I do think maybe if there are certain people whose opinion you like and respect, maybe you listen to it at times. But during the season, you're not making decisions based off what Brian Driscoll or Tim Priester or ESPN or Fox Sports or anybody else is saying.
You shouldn't be. You shouldn't be doing that. Yeah.
And Brian Kelly didn't get to where he is right now by allowing those things.
And that's fair.
So he made that clear, and he's already made it clear this year that he doesn't care what we think anyway. So, one of the things he talked about too was interesting was the need to push the ball vertically against Navy, and how the game plan that they've had in recent weeks is going to continue, but you have to be careful. And he made this comment, which I liked, which is you have to be careful about, you don't want to get into this ball control offense, which Notre Dame kind of was against North Carolina. You had mentioned that, it was quick game. And he said, you got to be able to push the ball vertically, because if you go on these 5-minute drives, you're playing right into the Navy's hands of shortening the game.
Yeah.
What you want to do is you want to come out, you want to score, and you want to score fast and put Navy behind.
Absolutely.
Get Navy behind.
Because no triple option team is good at coming back. I mean, it's just not built for that. So, completely
and every time Notre Dame's jumped on Navy quickly, they've been routes. They've turned out to be routes. The only exception was 2014 when Joe Schmidt got hurt in the first half. Second half, Navy came back. Actually, they started coming back in the second quarter, if you remember that game. I think they were up 24-7, and then Navy ended up taking a second half lead. Notre Dame ends up winning by 10. But for the most part, when Notre Dame jumps on them early, they go down. Mm-hmm. So that's